I loved teaching in Japan. It was so much fun. And of course, it depends on the school you're in, the area you're in, the prefecture, blah, 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 blah. But I loved it. I had the most amazing time when I was teaching here. I've also taught at almost every level of Japanese schooling, apart from high school. I didn't do high school, too many teenage angst. But I've taught at every other level, which is kindergarten, elementary school, and also junior high school. And I taught English for a while, 2.5, maybe about 3 years. And although teaching was fabulously fun, it very quickly gets, bad. I left my coffee in the kitchen. Hold on. Oh, there we go. The pay is terrible.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
When I was teaching English, the pay was really, really bad. And according to Dogen's most recent video about teaching English in Japan, the pay is still incredibly bad. But the low pay isn't surprising. They don't really have to offer like a competitive salary, considering there's a very long list of teaching applicants just waiting for their chance to get in Japan and teach the youth of tomorrow. That being said, the pay is really bad. We're talking borderline poverty wages. At one point, English teachers were being paid less than McDonald's workers in Japan. I'm very serious. It was less than minimum wage to be a teacher. And I can hear you screaming, how the fuck are they getting away with this? How are these dispatch companies getting away with paying teachers basically poverty wages? It's because you're not actually an employee. You sign this weird specialist haken contract, which basically gives you a kind of a 0-hour contract. But the vast majority of people who come over to work the English teaching jobs can't read their Japanese contract, even though they're signing one in Japanese and one in English, so don't actually really and truly know what they're agreeing to. And what you're agreeing to is basically a part-time position in the school. Thus, AOT, an assistant language teacher. According to most dispatch websites, they pay their teachers about 220,000 to 280,000 yen a month. That is not a good salary to have in Japan. Even if you're living in a more countryside area where your rent is cheaper and getting around from A to B isn't going to be as expensive, it's still not the best salary. If you're living closer to Tokyo or in Tokyo, for example, when I was teaching, I was living in Kanagawa, I got paid a little more, by which I mean the upper end of the sliding scale, so 280,000 yen a month. And this is all well and good for the first year, but you very quickly find out that it's not enough money to actually live and save on. Certain companies, and yes, for this video, I'm going to keep saying certain dispatch companies and these companies and not really tell you what companies I'm talking about. And that's mostly because a lot of companies in Japan are very litigious. Even if what you're saying online is 100% true, 100% backupable by data and evidence and things written on their own websites, they can still kind of take legal action against you if you quote unquote slander them. It's a ridiculous Japanese law. They have to sort it out. It's stupid. It's why a lot of industries in Japan are still pretty trash. It's because you can't publicly say online that company X is dog shit. Forgive me for not pointing out which companies are doing which things. Just know it's kind of a general rule for most, if not all companies. I digress. So as an AOT in Japan, your salary is going to be incredibly low. But don't worry, our magnanimous gods at the dispatch companies have given us two paths we can take. Choice one is a flat rate salary. That's when they take your yearly salary and they divide it up between 12 months and they spread that out evenly across the year. So instead of getting more or less 250,000 yen a month, you'll get, let's say, 200,000 yen a month throughout the year. And I know what you're thinking. Hold on a minute, Jordan. What? 250,000 yen a month? Why would I take 200,000 yen a month? I'm losing 50,000 yen. Make it make sense to me, Jordan. Well, let me explain. Remember more or less? Well, that's very important because in the summer and the winter months, that salary becomes less. You're only getting paid for the days that you're working, which means in the summer and the winter time, when you're only working, let's say 2 weeks out of the 1 month, you only get half of your salary. It can even be less. I've heard of people taking little holidays back home during the winter, coming back and realizing they've only received 10% of their salary. 10%. It's unlivable. It's actually unlivable. You can't live on that wage. You can't pay rent on that wage. It's an awful place to work. Just terrible during the summer and the winter months. This is why a lot of teachers go for option A, smoothing their salary out among the entire year. So even if they're not working the month, or they get sick, or they go back home to see their families, they're still going to receive a full paycheck at the end of the month. And while the salaries are bad in your first year, they only get worse in your second year. Now the salaries don't change, not at all. You're still poor. From first to second year, you will not see an increase in your salary. That's true for about 9 out of 10 cases of English teachers working in Japan. What is going to increase is the taxes. And in the second year in Japan, your taxes are finally going to catch up to you. Taxes in Japan are really weird. They're calculated off last year's income. And if you're a first year person working in Japan, you don't have last year's income. So what does that mean for you? No tax. Or at least the bare minimum of tax you have to pay for that year. Which means your first year, you're sitting kind of pretty. The second year hits and those taxes catch up to you, you are fucked. And I mean unbelievably fucked. It is actually insane how much tax the Japanese government is drinking from your tiny, tiny salary. Not only will you have to pay for national healthcare, to be fair, national healthcare, really, really good. It's pretty damn decent in Japan. It's kind of expensive on an English teacher's salary, but it's worth every penny you're paying into it. But you're also gonna have to start paying pension and residency tax. So second year hits and now you have 3 extra taxes you have to pay for. And these are expensive. These can go up to 80 to 100,000 yen a month. Insane for someone making 200,000 yen a month. So for most AOTs I know working in Japan, unless you have the bank of mommy and daddy helping you out, you're gonna have to get a part-time job. There's something I learned about pension in my 3rd year in Japan, and that's you can get an exemption for the entire thing. If you head to your city ward office with your payslip and you show them that you're a poor teacher, you gotta say poor twice, super important. You have to say poor teacher. So you show them that you're a poor teacher and they will give you a pension exemption. And that exemption can be from anywhere from 10 to 100%. You can also go back to the ward office as many times as you need to and apply for an exemption as many times as you need to so you can hit 100% pension exemption and you don't have to pay pension in Japan. If you're an AOT in Japan and you're doing this is perfectly okay. I think you're not making enough money and you're probably not going to be here for long enough for that to matter. But I would say the second you leave your AOT job and you start a career in Japan, if that exemption hasn't been removed yet, go back to the ward office, make sure it's removed, and start slowly paying in to your Japanese pension. It's too much of a headache later on down the road if you're applying for things like permanent residency or there's some tax or visa related things coming up. Just having your ducks in a row, having everything ticked and paid for, just makes it easier to move through the bureaucracy that is Japan. The whole industry really is built on like a deck of very soggy cards. I'm just chilling and waiting for the whole thing to collapse, honestly. It's absolutely insane. This one won't affect some of my audience members because a lot of you guys are from America, but schools want an American accent. Schools want teachers to teach in a standard, non-dialectal American accent. If you're from the UK or somewhere in Europe, they don't want you. They want like cool, I guess, California, maybe even sort of Midwest, very slow, easy to understand American non-dialectal English. If you're someone from a different background, you could get into a situation where you're going to be asked to change the way you speak in the classroom in order to fit that standard narrative. If you're not American, speaking in a standard American accent, sometimes your correct points about the English being taught in the schools will be dismissed. For example, I had a teacher who had introduced today's vocabulary as today's idioms. And the first time she did that, I was very confused. What do you mean, idioms? These are elementary school 3rd years. Why the fuck are we teaching these boys idioms? So I asked her, I was like, oh, idiom sensei? That interesting. That'll be fun. And then she begins to say things like car, bus, bike. I'm like, oh, vocabulary. And I'm thinking in this lesson, like, why the fuck does she say idioms? So after the lesson, I said to her, hey teacher, heads up, the word you're looking for is vocabulary. She literally answered me with, yeah, whatever, and then began to tell me for 10 minutes about how she had studied for 1 year in Seattle, and her English was very good. Her English, to be fair, was pretty damn good, but she's not a native speaker, so there's gonna be holes in her knowledge. Just like anyone studying an international language, you're gonna have holes in your knowledge, and it's up to the native speakers to patch those holes. However, because I wasn't an American person, she assumed that the patches I was giving her were not correct. Literally a year after I left the school, an American teacher took my place. She was still introducing vocabulary with the word idioms, and he told her once, hey, it's vocabulary, not idioms. And she never used idioms again. I spent a year telling her, stop calling it idioms, that's not the correct word, and she did not listen. But one word from Mr. USA, and she was on board. And there's a lot of that in schools. And even if you went to university to be a teacher, and you're now using those skills as an AOT, the teacher has the last say. And if she assumes for whatever reason that you're wrong, you're wrong. This can be a massive pain, but of course, it all depends on the schools you're in, the area you go to, how open the people are in the school to a new teacher coming in. And this sadly is doubly so if you're, goes to say, not a white person coming to Japan. If you're black or Asian, or you have some kind of background that requires them to question your skill in English, no, they are going to question your skill in English. Doubly so if you're a black person coming to Japan. The amount of inappropriate questions you have to fence from students, but also annoyingly teachers, eventually does get exhausting. From students, it's fine. From young students, a little bit older students, you realize these guys are kids. You could be the first international person they've ever seen. You could probably be the first black person they've ever seen, depending how deep in the countryside your company has sent you. So it's understandable. They're gonna ask some weird questions. They're gonna say some strange things. End of the day, they're children. You laugh, you brush them off, you answer their questions when you can, and you kind of just leave them to their own devices, and eventually the questions stop. But it's when you've been working there for a year or two, and you're still having to field questions from not the students, but the teachers, that you start thinking about leaving the company, because the amount of inappropriate questions I've received from teachers, both in and outside of school, is ridiculous. At one point, I had a teacher ask me, do I pay tax? Do I pay tax? I've been living here for 2 years. What the fuck do you mean, do I pay tax? But he was adamant that international people living in Japan don't pay tax. These are teachers. You're meant to be the educators of young minds. In the grand scale of things you can do in Japan as an international person living here, AOT is kind of the bottom of the list. And although we shouldn't be looking up or down at people working a job in another country, sadly that's just the case in Japan, with a lot of foreigners looking down at other foreigners. Personally, I think internationals living in Japan need to chill. Whether you're an international lawyer here, or you're working in some kind of media or conglomerate, or your Japanese is perfect and you're doing some kind of 9-to-9 disgusting braku kaisha work in a traditional Japanese firm in Tokyo, cool, leave the AOTs alone. A lot of them are just kind of here for a year to hang out, and the ones that aren't and want to live here full time working as an English teacher generally like the job they do. If I could make my current salary as an English teacher in Japan, I would still be working as an English teacher in Japan. It's a fun, fulfilling job, and it doesn't really have as much stress as a lot of other jobs that one could be doing in Japan. But full circle, there's still a lot of pressures from schools that you're working in as an AOT. Being an AOT actually stunts your career growth. Like, I'm generally serious. It actually stunts your career growth. It's basically taking a big gap year in another country. And if your plan is to come to Japan, be an English teacher, then eventually work in Japan in a different career, I would say it might be better for you to work in your home country just for a little bit, gain a little bit of experience in the sector you want to eventually transfer into, and then come to Japan, and then work in Japan as an English teacher for a year to chill for a bit, to get the visa, before transferring to a better career option. If you find yourself stuck in the AOT loop for too long, you will find yourself stuck in the loop forever. Working in a classroom, working with young people, this can be extremely enriching. And I know people who want to do this forever. This is the only job they want to do from now until the day they retire. And I think that's fantastic. But I would say transition from an AOT position to, if you can, direct hire, or a position that you're working in an actual school. Get a teaching license while you're an AOT. Try to train up and use the free time you get working as an AOT to get a teaching license, level up your Japanese, and then transition into an international school or a Japanese school where you are like sort of the in-house English teacher, homeroom teacher style position. Because if you're stuck in that loop of being an AOT for too long, you'll find yourself unhireable inside of Japan, but but also unhireable outside of Japan. This is doubly so if you've been living in Japan working as an AOT for an extended period of time, let's say 7 to 10 years, and you found that you've not improved your Japanese language ability at all. In returning to your home country, looking for jobs, the first few questions are going to be, what were you doing in Japan for 7 to 10 years? And then how's your Japanese? And if your answers are, I was an assistant language teacher and I don't speak Japanese, if I'm the hiring director, I'm like, yo, this guy has zero initiative. He's been in Japan for over a decade and bro can't fucking Nihongo taberu? Get this boy out of here! No initiative, no drive. It doesn't look good on paper and it doesn't look good in practice. So being an AOT can stunt your growth. It can stunt your career growth really badly. And that's why it's up to you to proactively take the time being an English teacher gives you to skill up, study up, do something out of that AOT cycle to make yourself more employable for the future. It's the people that don't do it that find themselves waking up in 10 years and realizing they've been in the Japanese countryside for over a decade, don't have any skills to transfer out of the position, and while they would like to continue being an AOT forever, the industry has shifted and that area no longer needs English teachers, or the dispatch company in the area they're living in has left and a new one has come in, but that new dispatch company already has their own teachers that they're bringing into the area. The job itself can be very unstable. So once again, skill up, language up, transfer out to something more permanent when you can.
Please, sir, I want some more.
The pay never rises. You are basically on a yearly contract year after year after year. Unless you are like the greatest English teacher in Yamanashi and you're working at every single school in Yamanashi and all of those schools love and adore you and they will fucking riot if you take Smith Sensei out of the classroom. And while that does sound crazy, that's an actual thing. There are teachers that have worked in areas for various different dispatch companies for the exact same schools for decades, only because they are the tippity top best at what they do. And if you're the tippity top best at what you do, you've put yourself in a position to get maybe a couple 100,000 yen more every year. And then eventually, maybe one of those schools will hire you as a direct hire English teacher. But these are unicorn positions. But they do happen. They're just extremely rare. And if you're not in that position, you can't get a pay rise. And every year, there is a line of people waiting outside of Japan to live here for a single year to experience the majesty of the Japanese countryside before heading back to their home countries to doing whatever career they studied their degree in. And because of that, a mid-range AOT who's just kind of okay, kind of liked by his schools but not really, kind of does his job well but not really, you're in no position to negotiate. At your yearly contract renewal, what are you gonna say? Give me a pay rise or I quit? Okay, quit. Bring in the next fresh graduate who wants to spend a year living in Obama. You don't really have much leverage to negotiate your salaries. Now, once again, there's going to be someone in the comments like, well, actually, I lived in Wakashima and I managed to get a pay rise in my second year. I went from 25 to 27,000 yen. Great job. You got an extra $100. You know, congratulations. I'm glad that you got a pay rise. But it's not a situation most people find themselves in. And generally, most pay rises in other companies are substantially more significant. The JET program, for example, their yearly money looks something like this. This is how much money you're making per year in the JET program, and see how it slowly increases every year? Yeah, that's because they're a government-funded program. Private dispatch companies who have you on a Hokken contract or contract that only needs to be renewed every year, they're kind of free to do whatever they want as long as they're not aggressively breaking laws. And I mean aggressively, because I'm pretty sure they're breaking laws now. It's just not aggressive enough for the government to stop them. That being said, dispatch companies are kind of in the same position as you, a single AOT in Japan. You, a single AOT, are replaceable by the AOT waiting in the wings. However, the dispatch company who owns the contract for Obama is also equally replaceable by another dispatch company waiting in the wings to take that position. It's a very interesting game of hot potato that these dispatch companies play with various contracts in Japan. And this is what I mean by the industry is very shaky. You could be working for Interac 1 year, and then the next year they lose the contract to Hart Corporation, and you might come to school one day to find a Hart Corporation contract in your desk with them telling you to sign it if you want to continue working in the area. I'm deadly serious. This is actually what happens. As long as the dispatch company can fill the amount of teachers needed to fill the area, the government don't care who the fuck gets the contract. They'll give it to the cheapest one every fucking time. I assume the vast majority of people who have applied for an English teacher position in a dispatch company in Japan have written down Tokyo as their #1 choice of prefectures that they want to live in. Now, while Tokyo is technically an option, that option is saved for the best of the best AOTs, direct hires, private contracts. Like, it's a very special situation that doesn't require a blanket contract for the area. And while a blanket contract may exist, that contract is being filled by very advanced teachers. Tokyo is a very rich area for dispatch companies and government-run companies alike. And if you're working in JET, that goes doubly for you. About 7 years ago, the Japanese government decided that not only do junior high school and high school students need to learn English, but that English education needs to start from elementary school. And we're not talking games and fun times and pat a cake and this teacher comes in once a year, does a few talks and leaves. We're talking an actual syllabus to get the kids engaging with and speaking English. Now, what the kids used to do in 6th grade, they're doing in 3rd grade, which is brilliant. Because as we know, the general English ability in Japan is kind of lower than other countries in the area. This did mean that Japan needed more teachers. And if you've got yourself on the JET program, there's an 80% chance you're going to the deep countryside. The countryside of Japan would be my recommendation, to be fair, for anyone coming to live and work in Japan. It can be isolating. You might be the only foreigner in the entire area. There might not be much to do, but this is Character Development, the movie. In the deep countryside of Japan, you have 2 options, sink or swim. And for those that swim, you're going to build yourself up, not only in Japanese ability, because once again, you'll be the only foreigner here, but also the connections you make will be deeper, the people you meet will be friendlier, and generally your time spent in the Japanese countryside will be cherished. Even if you're only here for a single year and then you fly back home, you will love the time you spent here. At least I hope you'll enjoy the time you spent in the Japanese countryside, because once again, it can be lonely. The Japanese countryside can be fun, but it is a harder place to live. Trains, they've heard of them in myth and legend. Cars, that's what you'll be using to get around most of the time. You'll be lucky if you have a convenience store a 15-20 minute walk from your area. And while it might be your dream to live in some big city in Japan and kind of explore city life there, I think you're forgetting point number 1. You're going to be poor. And the closer you live to the city, while you're going to see a tiny little bump in your salary, it's not going to be enough to really explore and enjoy the city to the level that you're hoping.
Hire a samurai.
Throughout the video, I may have mentioned some of these points before, but a quick speed round just to pinpoint things you should lock onto if you're coming to live and work in Japan. Yes, being an AOT does give you a lot of time to study and maybe also skill up, but from your 2nd year, you're gonna need a second job. And that second job is gonna take away a lot of that time you originally had during your 1st year. Skilling up with what time? But you're gonna have to find the time, because once again, if you don't get these things done, you're gonna be stuck in that AOT death spiral. You can work in an eikaiwa. An eikaiwa is kind of a private language school. Eikaiwas pay a lot more money than working as an AOT in a school. The problem is, you're basically sacrificing a shitload of time and less pay for more money, but no time at all. Eikaiwas aren't schools. They're not operating on a 9 to 4 system. They're operating on a, whenever our clients can get into our school, that's when we're open system. So we're talking mornings, afternoon, late evenings, and weekends, especially Saturday evenings. Your weekends are basically dead. And depending on the eikaiwa you find yourself working for, you may find your weekdays dead too. The money is really good though. While teaching can be very fulfilling, it's all school dependent. Once again, you are only an assistant language teacher. Your job is meant to be to assist the main teacher in their classroom duties. Although you might find yourself with a teacher who doesn't really care about English studies, and thus they're gonna sit themselves in the back of the classroom and just kind of watch you flail about by the chalkboard. And while this can be fun for teachers who have experience and want to be the T1, you gotta remember, you're not being paid to be a full-time English teacher. There's a lot of things that you have to do as a full-time English teacher that the teacher is technically paid and trained to do, and now they're making you do it. These are some really compelling reasons to not teach English in Japan. But I sit here and I tell you, I actually really enjoyed my time teaching English in Japan, but I did go in knowing these points and understanding that these are things I was going to have to deal with once I get to Japan. So there's no point me sitting here letting you know of all the wonderful stories and memories I made teaching English and all the good parts you'll find teaching English in Japan until I tell you about the bad. And if you have questions about moving to or teaching English in Japan, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be happy to jump down and answer any questions you have. But guys, I'm gonna love you and leave you there. Should I make a video about the good things about teaching English in Japan? I kind of think I should, but I'll see what the community thinks. But until then guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.